As we start today's ramble, October 2020, to ramble on about our move to way more than 50 years ago. Again, when we moved from upstate New York, Horseheads, my dad got a job down at RCA in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, so we loaded up the truck, the car, station wagon. It was actually a 1965 Dodge Dart station wagon. It was white in color on the outside. I think it had blue interior, but it's been a few years. I can't exactly remember anymore. But we moved to Pilgrim Drive in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in one of the suburbs outside Lancaster. I do remember the house was, I think, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, had a fireplace, one of those fireplaces where it goes through from the living room into the dining room, and it had a basement. I remember our neighbors were the Gilroys, where many years later we visited the Gilroys in Gilroy, California, where they had moved. I guess the name attracted them or something. They were nice neighbors. They lived there about the same time we lived there. They left and bought a beautiful, almost like a mansion, a castle mansion in closer to downtown Lancaster, and we used to visit them there as well. But the year we lived there on Pilgrim Drive, I do remember the Gilroys had this huge, it seemed huge at the time, weeping willow tree on the side yard. We were on the corner on one side, and they were on the corner on the adjacent street on the other side. And so a lot of fun times playing under the tree, playing in the tree, things like that. One of the things that was momentous about that first summer before I started first grade there was I met some new friends riding my bike, and in riding my bike we were trying different tricks riding down this little hill. It seemed like a steep hill at the time, but going back years later it wasn't so steep. But we were doing different tricks like riding down with our feet up on the handlebars. So we're doing that probably an hour or two one Saturday afternoon. And so on one of the trips up the hill, I saw my parents were walking down to see what I was doing. So I said, "Hey, watch this." And guess what? I crashed. I went over a bump and flew in the air, and my leg got twisted up in my bicycle, and I broke my leg. Ouch. Well, being a 6-year-old at the time, it did hurt a lot. Had to go get a cast, and I think that's one of the few times I fainted in my life, was when I had the cast. They would stand up. I stood up, and promptly I was caught, of course. Had to learn how to use crutches for the first time, and so for state, new city, I was in a cast. So that was my first experience at that school. One of the things I do remember about that school also was playing out in the playground, talking to one of my classmates, and he was telling me about this musical group, and I'd never heard them before. And he said, "You've never heard of the Beatles?" I said, "Like the bug on the ground? What a stupid name for a music band." And little did I know that the Beatles were very popular, and now I have grown to love their music, and of course, and know many of the songs. So it's the Beatles, yeah. So some of the things that around Lancaster, many people know Lancaster is where the Amish are from, or many Amish live in that area. They're known as the Pennsylvania Dutch, but actually Dutch is Deutsch. Deutsch is German. They're not Dutch, they're German. But they lived primarily on the east side of Lancaster, and we lived primarily on the west side of Lancaster in all the years that I lived there, especially this first year. So we did see them. There was some sightseeing. You can go drive through the countryside, see their farms, see their horses and buggies, see them riding around. I'll talk about the Amish in later videos, but it was interesting to grow up for a dozen or so years living relatively near the Amish and in that community. Another cool thing near Lancaster, about 35 miles away or so, is Hershey, Pennsylvania. And yes, that's where Hershey chocolate is from. So we used to get to go to the Hershey factory. In fact, the very first time I went to the Hershey factory was with my cast and my broken leg. So I got special treatment in getting to go sort of in the back areas because I wasn't able to walk with my crutches as well in some of the main areas. So the employees gave me special treatment. This is back when you actually got to tour inside the actual factory where they made the chocolate. A few years later, they changed it and turned it into a tourist attraction where the factory really wasn't, it's not a real factory. It's a faux factory, a fake factory, sort of like you might see at Disneyland or something where they're pretending to make chocolate, but they make real chocolate in the real factory where they don't have tourists go there anymore. But it was nice to be able to go through the real factory. In later years, going through still the real factory, we got to go do some of the taste tests where they do surveys and you get to taste different types of chocolate that they might be looking to sell in the future and give your honest opinions. That was a lot of fun. I remember doing that. Another thing I did that first year living in Lancaster was I got to start piano lessons. I do remember starting piano lessons. We bought a piano and I got to practice. That was a long time ago. I continued taking lessons for probably 4 or 5 years until I was able to switch to another instrument, which the first 2 years, I think, was a bass violin, one of those big stand-up bass violins that you see. And then after that, so I could stop playing that, I got to switch to the bass guitar. And no, I don't play anymore. Haven't played in 40 years probably. But all growing up, I was encouraged, aka forced, to play musical instruments. One of the lessons I learned while I lived there in that first house is not to eat paper in church. So when we used to go to church back then, I was bored. So they used to have these little paper envelopes in the church pew, in the back of the church pew that you were supposed to put money in to put in the collection plate. Well, I was bored, and so I used to take those and I'd tear them up and I'd eat them. Just out of boredom. I don't know why. They didn't taste that good, but it was something to do while the sermon was going on. So one night, it was a Sunday night, we were at church and I was eating my paper and my parents decided to teach me a lesson. So we went home and my dad made hamburgers. He made hamburgers. He used a skillet on the stove and he pan fried some burgers. And guess what? He also had in there frying in the burger juice. He made some paper burgers. He took some paper and put it in there in the juice, and while everyone else got a nice, juicy, delicious cheeseburger, guess what I got served? I got served paper in burger juice. And yes, I learned my lesson, and I never ate paper products in church again. So Hannah, Tyler, don't eat paper in church so you can eat real burgers at home. Okay, that's the lesson for the day. Let's see, what else? I do remember, in addition to that 65 Dodge Dart we had, my dad also bought a 59, I think it was a 59 Pontiac. And that was a fun car to drive around with the old 50s styling and everything. So, but yeah, that was a fun first year in Lancaster. And so the next ramble, we'll talk about when we moved from that house that we were renting there and bought a house out in the country on the outskirts of Lancaster. So, everyone, Hannah, Tyler, family, friends, subscribers, hope you enjoyed this as we watch the deer in Marymore Searight Park. Have a great day. Give a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe, comment, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.